to Osborne International Dressage. My name is Charlotte Osborne and this is Hannah Mork, and today we're going to show you a tutorial about braiding. Okay Hannah, what is the first step to braiding?
The first step is gathering your supplies. So everything I have that I need to braid is right here in my braiding belt. I have a little plaiting comb or a pulling comb. I also have my rubber bands. These are simply placed on a pen that I've put in my braiding belt. I also have my needle and thread for when I sew the braids in. And then I'm also going to show you a method of plaiting your braids with the bobby pins today. And then lastly, we just have this clip to hold the excess hair out of the way so that I have a clear working space. Before I begin plaiting a horse, I think about the type of horse that I have, the conformation of the horse, and the type of mane that horse has. If I have a Lusitano that has a very short, thick neck, I need to put lots and lots of little braids in there to elongate that neck. However, if I have maybe a young 4-year-old that's a bit gangly and legs everywhere, I want to have fewer, thicker braids to make the whole horse look shorter in their frame. Also, if the horse has a very thick mane, if it's frizzy and difficult to handle, I'm going to trim that horse's mane quite longer so I have more material to work with. If you have a thick mane and you cut it too short, it can be difficult to fold. On the other hand, if I have a horse like this that has more of an average mane, it's very sleek, it's very flat, hers is quite easy to braid, so I'll be going somewhere in the middle. So when I plait a horse's mane, my main goal is to thicken the neck so that the horse's top line looks more impressive. You can see here how there's a little bit of a scalloped effect to the mane, how the braid is raising the horse's neck and adding more dimension to their top line. In the show ring, this look is especially eye-catching. And then I want a tight, neat little button. The whole secret to braiding is pretty much tightness. Every single part of your braid needs to be tight. If you are tight enough, your braid is probably going to work out just fine. Normally when you encounter problems, it's because some element of your braiding or your wrapping is not tight enough. Okay, so when I go to start braiding this horse's mane, a lot of people use different products to slicken the horse down. Some people like the horse's mane to be quite wet with water. Other people prefer it dry. There are sprays that you can buy that are made specifically for plaiting. Some people just use hair gel. My personal preference is to just use your average hairspray. It really doesn't matter to me. So what I'll do is I'll take my plaiting comb here, and I know that with this horse and the way that I like to braid in more of the Dutch style is I typically select a chunk of the mane that's about the size of my comb plus a little extra. So not quite here, but about there. And I use the tip of my plaiting comb to create a nice straight line so that everything is beautiful and professional. Then I grab my little clip and pull that excess hair out of my way. Now that I have the section that I want to work with, I'm going to spray my hairspray all over the horse. Now, Happy Feet is a very experienced horse, so we know that she's quite comfortable with the hairspray, but on a younger horse, you might want to spray it into your hand while you're stepped off of your stool, or spray it into a rag and then wipe it all over the horse, or use one of the other forms such as the hair gel that isn't quite as frightening. But Happy Feet, she's an experienced show horse. She knows her job, so none of this bothers her. So I just simply spray it all over, paying special attention to get the ends of the hair and all of the hair at the base right here. That helps keeps your flyaways down. Good girl. And then before I start, I'm going to squish it down with my hand so that everything lies nice and flat. At this point, I'm simply going to braid down the horse's mane. Divide it up into 3. And then I find that the 2 most critical crossovers are these first 2. I want to make these as tight as possible. So I'll crisscross and then I squeeze and tighten it down to the horse's mane. I want to squeeze it so my hands are as close to her actual neck as possible. Don't tighten it with your hands way up here because you'll get a different looking braid. So I cross over once, twice, and then squeeze the braid tight so that I have an anchor right underneath my horse's mane. Right here, where the hair goes immediately into the braid as opposed to taking a long track. And then I simply braid it down, trying to keep it as tight as possible as I go down the whole entire braid. Like I said, the tighter you are, the better your braids will be. So now that I've gotten close to the end where it's becoming a little bit difficult to hold all of these hairs into my fingers, I'll just take my little braiding band and wrap it around. Again, trying to get this really tight. And then to keep these smaller hairs from flying away, I fold it over and tuck it in just like that. All right, so if I'm braiding for a show, I'm going to add another little spritz of hairspray on the top and on the bottom and wipe it down to hold the braid exactly where it needs to be so that our braids are perfect at the show. Then the wrapping of the braid is another key element to making sure that your braid is successful. So I'm going to take the band of my braid and I'm going to tuck it in and really push it hard into that anchor that I made before, where the hair is tight into the braid. And then because her mane is quite short, I just have to fold it one more time. But with the horse, like I said, with a longer, thicker mane, I might have to roll it a few times. Next, I'm going to take out my needle and I'm going to push right in the center of that horse's mane, through the center of the button, and try to get through my rubber band, or as close to it as possible. Grab those hairs and pull it through. Now my string, as you can see, has a little bit of a knot in it. So when I pull, it'll stick at the end and not pull all the way through. That's a handy hint. I'm a lazy braider, so I want my job to be as easy as possible. Now that I've gotten my first cross through right through the center of the braid, what I then do is I kind of draw a box with my thread so that I get all the different angles of hair and all the different areas of the braid covered. So I'm going to go diagonal line, straight line, diagonal line, straight line, and then if the braid still seems a little bit wobbly, then I'll go back and forth through the center a couple of times. So here's my first diagonal line. I'm going to come in through the back of the braid. Don't come in through here, otherwise you're going to have a string that'll lie here on your braid. So come in from the back of your braid and go diagonally through, like this, through your button. That will grab the hair from one side. Now I'm going to go straight through the side. Don't go through the middle, go through the side. That will stop your rubber band from slipping out the side. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but sometimes that can happen. And pull it tight. Now I'm going to do another diagonal line through the button, the second part of my X, just like so, right through diagonally. Pop. And then I'm going to do that final straight line down the side, just like that. So again, I've gone on this side and I've gone on this side to really lock that rubber band in there. So at this point, I kind of pinch, poke my braid, poke at it, make sure, is this a solid braid? And this one is really solid. You could go and show with a braid like this, but because I'm a perfectionist, I'll go through and back out one more time just to make sure I am tight. So I'm coming in through the back of the button at the very end and coming out the center at the base. There's really no need to put thread through this top part of your button. You're primarily locking in the sides and the bottom. Those are the three areas where it really starts to fall apart after a couple days or a long show or after your horse rolls in the stall. And then to finish off, I'm going to go in through the very bottom of my button, pull it out the back side, and then whenever I've decided that this braid is tight enough for my satisfaction, I'm going to simply cut the thread at the very end, making sure, of course, not to cut my precious horse's mane. And that's it. That's your button. So frequently braiding takes quite a bit of time. If we're showing at a horse show, especially if it's like regionals or a big event, we will sew all of the braids in so that they last a long time and we can get multiple days of use out of a single plaiting session. But most of the time when we braid a horse, we're showing it for sales. It just has to look good for about an hour and a half. And so we use a style of braiding called quick braiding, which is a nice little cheat to save yourself a lot of time and a lot of effort. So what I'm going to do is take my bobby pin. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. Okay. So this is a standard bobby pin. It's just open at the two sides. And what I'm going to do is use this instead of my braiding thread. So what I will do is you can see here that I have plaited my braid just like normal, and I'm going to roll it in the exact same way. So I'm going to take my rubber band, push it into the anchor, and then fold it up as tightly as I can, really pinching it into the base of that neck. And then what I'm going to do is take my bobby pin, and I'm going to stick it in through the bottom part of that braid, not through the top or the sides or anywhere else, a single one at the very bottom. And I'm trying to get each of those prongs, one on either side of my rubber band, to lock it in there. And I'm going to push it through the outside, making it nice and tight with my thumb to push it there. Now, when I want to be done with the braid, I'm going to fold these two tips into a T, and just like that, you have your button done. Now, the only part that's undesirable about this is that you can see the bits of the bobby pin sticking out, but it's a really good way of getting a braid in really, really quickly. Most people don't even notice it, especially if you have a horse with a black mane. We also have chestnut colored bobby pins for our chestnut horses. It's a really, really fast way to do this. You can braid an entire horse in less than 10 minutes in this way. So this brings us to the forelock, that last little bit of pop before you go down the show ring. To do your forelock, I'm going to French braid it down and then add a button at the very end to tidy up all of the loose bits. When you do this, patience is one of the most important things. As you're adding your crisscross sections and French braiding in, take very, very small sections. That will be the key to having a beautiful French braid. So I've taken the top section of her hair way up here by the baby hairs, and I'm going to divide it into 3 equal groups, just like that. So now I'm going to crisscross underneath once, underneath twice, and that starts my braid. So from here, now every time I crisscross, I'm going to be adding a section of hair from the hair lower down on the forelock. So I'll add just a little bit and crisscross it. Add just a tiny section of hair, again, not too much hair, and then crisscross. Working my way all the way down the mane until I have everything done. It's important not to get impatient with this process. Always add small chunks because that will make your braid look very neat and tidy, and it will be more impressive in the show ring. As I'm going, I'm also keeping my hands quite close to her actual face. If I braid way up off of her head, I'll have a loose floppy braid that has a lot of flyaways. So I keep on pressing that braid back down towards her mane and tightening it with every single pull. And again, this is just a crisscross thing. If you're doing your forelocks quickly and you don't think it takes that much time, you're probably doing it too rushed. If you want a forelock that really pops, take your time with it. Good girl. So now I've reached the end of the base of the hair. So now I just braid the 3 strands all the way down to the end and tie it off like a rubber band, just like how I normally would. All right, so we're at the end of our forelock braid, and you can see how many crisscrosses it took for me to get to the base of her hair. There are probably 12 crisscrosses here, so really take your time as you do that, and then you're going to get this nice sharp look. So from here, I just roll it up and button it just like I would any normal braid along the mane. Stick the rubber band into the base, fold it in half, and then use my needle and thread to tie it together. So I'm going to come in from the back, down through the bottom, grab all of the layers of hair. Make sure that as you've rolled your hair, you're hitting all of them as you go. And I'm going to walk down my braid, creep crawling down the excess part of the braid. And now here's the real key to changing your horse from a unicorn where it sticks out like this to something that's tight and looks quite professional. You are going to stick your needle in from the top and then down and stick it so that I'm really tracing her skin as I go up underneath here and pop up well above there. As I pull this tight, it is going to suction that top of the braid down and underneath. I will do that same stroke a couple of times, coming out quite high and then down at the base, not through the top of the mane, popping out, and then see how that snugs your forelock braid down to the horse's forehead. And then I will snap that off, and there you have a beautiful forelock braid that lies very flat. So our mare is almost ready to go right into the show ring, but last I'm going to give her one spritz of the hairspray to make sure that all of the flyaways stay exactly where they're supposed to. And then as I've braided with my needle, you want to make sure that you use an extremely blunt needle so that if you were to ever touch your horse with it, it wouldn't hurt them at all.
And that's how you braid a horse. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comments below.